recognised last month in the King's Birthday Honours list with a British Empire Medal for services to hospitality industry. So let's welcome together John Dammone.
John, you're an entrepreneur. I can still remember somebody mentioned it about when I was 21 years old, a long time ago. You're an entrepreneur. Now, I had no idea what the word actually meant, entrepreneur. Touching on a couple of things that were mentioned earlier on about nature or nurture, I was brought up in an Italian family where business was discussed around the kitchen table. Who knows whether or not that's rubbed off on me? I suppose to a certain extent it did rub off on me. But I had no idea what the word actually meant, entrepreneur. So I looked it up in the dictionary. And in the Oxford Dictionary it defines it as a person who sets up a business taking on financial risks in the hope of profit. But what defines a successful entrepreneur? And importantly, what are the skill sets required in order to achieve this? In the short time that I have this morning, I'd like to touch upon some of the key characteristics that I believe have defined my life to shape my life as an entrepreneur. It's an exciting journey, the path of an entrepreneur, but in equal measures, it's a challenging path. All the easy stuff has been done already. So you proceed on the basis that if it's easy, it's been done already and you've probably missed the boat. So on that note, let's see if I can get this to work. Let's talk about some characteristics here. Resilience. The very nature of being an entrepreneur means that you're going to have to take some risks. Measured risks, but risks nonetheless. And sometimes you might fail. If this happens, you need to have the resilience not to let this stop you in your tracks, in your vision, in your goal. Stop. Take stock of what has happened and take any lessons that you can from that. I've had a career spanning over 5 decades now, and during that period of time, we started other ventures and other businesses. Not all of them have been successful. 35 years ago, we opened a chain of pizza delivery shops. I think it's fair to say that at that stage, we were what is now known as industry disruptors. This was an era when the industry was dominated by small, independent, often family-run pizzerias. There certainly were none of the chains that were ubiquitous now, such as your Domino's of this world, etc. So, how were we disruptors? Well, first of all, technology. So the year was 1989. That's 35 years ago. Personal computers were very much in their infancy then, and certainly there were not anything you would see in your local pizza outlet. The internet as we know it just didn't exist then. The software that powers your point of sale systems these days just didn't exist in those days along the lines it does now. So we built our own software. A customer would call up, would ask for the telephone number, keys into the system, and we'd bring up the customer's order history. We'd say, "Hello, Mr. Smith. Yes, nice to hear from you again. Would you like your margarita pizza with extra chilies that you had last week?" Well, that is hardly groundbreaking stuff in 2024, but 35 years ago, it was mind-blowing, and literally it blew the customers' minds away. In the United States, the pizza industry was a lot more developed than it was in the UK then, and so we went there to see what we could learn, what we could glean to bring back to the UK. So we sourced a lot of our equipment from the United States. We were one of the first people to bring in a conveyorized pizza oven, which we knew was something that was crucial for us to have that consistency of product when you're looking to roll a concept out. By the time we opened our third pizza outlet, we had sourced out our pizza dough production. So we had this recipe from the 1970s, and we then needed to ensure that that was consistent throughout all of our outlets. So we engaged with a bakery, and we managed to get them to replicate on a daily basis the same recipe. And importantly, also handle the logistics of delivering that to all the individual outlets on a daily basis. Excuse me. So we had a great product. It was very well liked. We had the technology and we were profitable. So what went wrong? In a word, we were undercapitalized. So we'd done all the usual projections. We had a very detailed business plan. We had a cash flow. The cash flow had a sensitivity analysis built into it to ensure that we sort of planned for the unexpected. Notwithstanding all of that, it just wasn't enough. What that meant was we'd got up to 3 outlets. We didn't have the capital behind us to scale up to the amount of pizza outlets that we needed to make the whole business model stack up. So we pulled ourselves together and we said, right, what are we going to do? So we sold the 3 existing profitable outlets as a going concern. And we said, well, so we left, but we left with a very valuable lesson learned. And that lesson was that when you're costing out a business venture, do not, no matter what your forecasts say, don't be too conservative. Do not be too conservative. You can look at borrowing more money. You don't have to draw down on all of that money all at once. You can do it in tranches, but look at giving yourself that leeway so you don't run the risk of being undercapitalized. And I think the lesson that I learned moving from that day onwards was that whenever I look at my figures, I'll routinely add, in some cases, up to 50% to a business plan. And then what I will do is I will organise with the lenders that I can draw that down in tranches. So if I don't need it all, then I'm not unnecessarily paying for that finance cost. So resilience, but learn from your lessons moving forward. Don't just adapt to change, but actively embrace it. You can be overwhelmed by change sometimes, but in order to succeed, you need to be pushing at the edges all of the time. Part of our operation at Salvo's over the years was a salumeria, which was an Italian retail delicatessen specialising in imported Italian produce, and a cafe. It opened in 2004 and it was very successful. It had a really successful run, and then it closed with the rest of the industry during the COVID lockdown. We did reopen eventually, but it was evident there had been a seismic shift in the business. This had started off slightly before the lockdowns with Brexit. So with Brexit, what happened is it started putting barriers in for us to import the Italian produce directly ourselves from Italy. And this was one of our USPs. So that had started to diminish. During lockdown itself, what happened was a huge amount of retail went online. And even after restrictions were lifted and people could come and shop in person, the pre-COVID levels of business, they just didn't return. It was clear that we had to change. We'd had this successful model for a couple of decades, but it had to change. I still remember the day in 2022, I sat down with my brother with copious quantities of cappuccino, and we had a brainstorming session. So we looked at different scenarios, or we could tweak this, we could change that, get rid of the bits that aren't working as well. We tossed it all around, and then we came to the decision that this needed radical surgery. We made the decision to completely gut that site and that operation, completely change our product offering, and turn the site into a bar serving Italian street food. So we went from this, which was our cafe and salumeria, to this. It took us 3 months from concept through to design, refit. There was a rebrand and everything. We had nothing when we sat down with that cappuccino other than we knew we had to change. So in 3 months, we replaced the cups of cappuccino and replaced them with a couple of glasses of Prosecco. So, the thing about that is, being nimble and fast at execution when change is needed is one of the many skills an entrepreneur needs to have. Once you've made that difficult decision, and often it is difficult, you need to act on it without procrastinating and swiftly move on. People used to say to me regularly, well, you've got a busy restaurant. You don't really need to be looking at improving it or changing it, really. You guys have got it sorted. Nothing could be further from the truth. Continuous, incremental improvement makes a huge long-term effect on the efficiency of any organisation. The Japanese have got a word for this, and they call it Kaizen. So Kaizen was a philosophy that was largely credited with turbocharging the Japanese economy after the devastation of the Second World War. In essence, this entails continuous, often low budget, small improvements to a business and its processes. Sometimes it can be literally a 1% improvement in efficiency. However, the cumulative impacts of that cannot be underestimated. This philosophy can also be applied in different environments, not just in business. In the early noughties, the British cycling team appointed a new coach, a chap called Dave Brailsford. At the time, British cycling was not in a good place. In 76 years, they had taken just 1 medal in the Olympics in 76 years. So Dave Brailsford, he was a cyclist himself. And also, he'd done an MBA. So whilst he was studying for his MBA, he became fascinated with this concept of Kaizen and the notion of marginal gains. And he wanted to apply this philosophy to cycling. He reasoned that if he broke down the process of the team, the cycling, into all its constituent small parts, and he managed to exercise a small marginal improvement to all of those processes, the cumulative impact of that would be absolutely enormous. So what were these marginal gains? Well, he looked at everything. So he looked at putting the riders through a wind tunnel, studied the dynamics, looked at changing the helmet, the material used in the clothing. It just went on and on and on, looking to extract that tiny little bit extra in order to turn what was a not successful team into a successful team. So how did they do? The British cycling team went on from that abysmal, I'll just remind you, 1 medal in 76 years to 7 gold medals at the 2004 Olympics and 7 gold medals at the 2008 Olympics. If in business you can build a team to embrace that philosophy of continuous improvement, it will hugely improve your efficiency. Around 2010, we were at Salvo's, we were approached by Channel 4 TV, and they wanted us to appear on a TV programme to find the best neighbourhood restaurants in the United Kingdom. The programme was hosted by a celebrity chef called Gordon Ramsay. We went on to be crowned the UK's best neighbourhood Italian restaurant. So the filming of the programme happened a couple of months before it was going to be aired. So we knew what the outcome had been. What we knew also was this exposure was going to be huge for us, unprecedented. Viewing figures at that time, sort of terrestrial TV, this was in an era before streaming and Netflix of this world took place, so it was hugely important. The viewing figures were often around 10 million people, and certainly the episode we were in drew audiences of that amount. We knew this was going to be a unique opportunity for us. And what we wanted to do, we wanted to grasp it with both hands to make sure that we got the best out of it. So central to this thinking was leveraging Gordon Ramsay's brand and profile. We ourselves we had a good brand. We were well known. We were well known in the area. However, we had nowhere near the profile that Gordon Ramsay had and still has to this day. So all our marketing and press we had ready. We had the plan ready for when the programme went out on air. It went out, and as predicted, the exposure was phenomenal for business. Business went through the roof, and it was as we expected. What we wanted to do, however, was to prolong the tailwinds of this unprecedented exposure for as long as possible, because sometimes, you can be yesterday's news very, very quickly. I hear people refer to this quite often as, I'll go backwards. So how did we do this? So from then onwards, whenever we had any press going out, we were very careful with our words, and we used to say, Salvo's voted the UK's best neighbourhood restaurant by Gordon Ramsay. So we were looking at leveraging his name. And I've heard people refer to this quite often as judo marketing is the word that I've used. So the principle of that is, in judo, what you do is you leverage somebody that's a lot bigger than you for your benefit. So that's what judo marketing is. And I'm not intending to throw Gordon Ramsay over my shoulder, but I sure wanted to, his much, much higher profile, to rub off on us, to capitalise on that association. Being an entrepreneur requires a vast skill set, of which I've touched only on just a couple of the things in the limited time we have. You have to have the ability to juggle lots of balls, tenacity and stamina. But I can tell you, the rewards are great. And there is no doubt in my mind that entrepreneurs have always been and will continue to be the powerhouse of the economy. Thank you.